you see, for example, women on the Facebook, they are more active than the men, but when you move to Twitter, the situation is different. So if you use just one data set from Facebook, maybe you come with a different conclusion rather than when you are using data from Twitter. This is also interesting slide, the emoji. If you use Apple phone and your friend, your wife, your husband, anyone, use like Samsung, you are very somehow angry, but what she or she think that you are happy, and you see this miscommunication. And it's come like so it's a bias, and then leads to some wrong actually outputs. And I thought that because we have machine learning, maybe in some points, in some days, we have just data, but now we have data, we have machine, that machine generates some data, that data comes to the cycle. And that's a problem, that we just have populated this bias through the system, which is very dangerous. I think recently you should saw this photo, that we use different data for different platforms. So if you use Facebook for like a formal decision making, this is not right. So the content production bias is another issue which you can see. And I think this campaign is just to collect the data for training data set. So that's okay, you can put it, but you should be aware that maybe they use it for training purposes. I think this is a very interesting slide. So here you can see that sometimes you share your data. For example, when you are in a hospital, you don't like to say, I'm sick. But when you are happy in the restaurant, good food, or you are in a party, you may share your data. So this is another important thing that based on the data which we have, we should not infer, because sometimes people don't just produce data or share the data. It doesn't mean it is not a data set there. And the temporal thing that, something we should wait, and that window time is the important thing in the research. So how many data we have, or we should have, or by when we should wait, that's another thing. Some just quick tip. So for the fairness, first the team is important. For example, for the vision, if you have people from like a Asian background, maybe they are better for like some vision. And there was another story that people who are like a white are not very good in like recognizing the Chinese people. So that's good that we have a diversity for the team. And also, this is important that there's a diversity. You may saw this slide that as a data scientist, while you need computer math, also you need domain knowledge, and that domain knowledge should be part of the team. Another thing is you should know the task, what you are going to deliver, who are your stakeholders in different sites, and potential errors or harms that can happen. What you are going to deliver at the end. And actually, that's all of why that's happening. So that explanation is very critical here. Let's finish away. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Dr. Morteza. I now request Dr. Shah to present him with a token of appreciation. Our next speaker is Dr. Asif Ekbal, currently an associate professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, IIT Patna. He has authored around 170 papers in top-tier conferences and high-impact journals. Today, he'll be talking about computational politeness in AI-enabled conversational systems. I invite Dr. Asif to deliver his talk.
thanks Tanmoy for the kind introductions and the other organizing committee, particularly Saad, who is my student. He recently joined here. So today I will be talking about one of our very recent work that we have published in April 2019. So where we have tried to show that how can we incorporate politeness into the conversational system. This is the outline of the talk. I will briefly introduce the conversational AI and energy because the work is a part of natural language generation. Then the definition and different attributes of politeness. I will briefly introduce those factors. And then the resources that we have created and the models that we have developed. Finally, the evaluations with the summary of the conclusion. So AI is one of the most discussed technology topics among the researchers, consumers, and enterprises today. And the conversational AI powered by natural language processing, machine learning, are the main, we can say that this has actually driven the power of artificial intelligence during the last few years. So some of the examples of conversational AI system, you all know this. So like Siri, Cortana, Google Now, or talking to your car, communicating with robots, clinical uses for mental health, chatting for fun, and the most simplest form nowadays in the form of the chatbot. So if we look at the recent report of chatbot, this is taken from the Global Trends and Analysis magazine. It shows that by 2020, that 80% of the enterprises will use chatbots. 2022, the banks will automate up to 90% of their customer interaction using chatbots. And according to Open Research, by 2021, the $4.5 billion will be invested in the chatbot. This shows that how this industry is setting up over the time. So more and more organizations are moving towards the conversation-driven interface, and nowadays, rather than the human-to-machine communications, we are more towards the conversation, the human-to-machine conversation. And I will show you some of the factors that will lead to the human-to-machine conversation. So if you look at the history of chatbot, so we had started our journey from the Elijah during 1960s, and there has been a lot of advancement to the different techniques. Nowadays, it is not simply like playing a song or booking an appointment, but now we are mainly concentrating in mimicking the human behaviors to the conversation. But how can we do that? So one is that we have to generate the coherent and engaging responses in the conversation to obviously deep language understanding and the reasoning capability. We should understand the user's need, context, and the moods. Should be able to respond with the personalization, very important factor nowadays for every chatbot. To introduce the sentiment, the emotion into the dialogue system. And also how to balance between the two different factors like specificity and the empathy. So these are two very important factors that you have to balance. So all these are possible, all these can be achieved through the very sophisticated natural language processing and the machine learning system. So as Facebook AI has identified that if you want to actually build the AI-based conversational systems, there are 5 different factors. The one is the consistency, then the specificity. So you have to exactly produce the answers with a lot of specific information that actually you are looking for, and you are from the chatbot. There should be a kind of empathy into the model. So there you need the help of sentiment, emotion, and also the politeness that I will talk about in my lecture. Then the fourth one is the knowledgeability. It has to be knowledgeable, and also it has to be there should be a capability of multi-modal understanding. That there can be the input in very different ways, not only text but text, audio, video, images. That can be anything. So how to handle that? So traditionally, there are 2 kinds of dialogue system. One is open chit chat, which is generally is difficult because there is no any specified task. The other one is a task-oriented dialogue. So you have a For example, railway reservation or let's say airline reservation is a kind of specific task that you are trying to focus on. So if you want to build any task-oriented systems, there are a few components. So particularly if it is a speech-to-speech processing, then there should be a kind of automatic speech recognition. Then there are natural language understanding module, then dialogue management, and then finally the natural language generation. And then you have taken should have a synthesizer for text-to-speech. So this is the typical cycle of any typical chatbot. Okay. So my talk mainly will concentrate on the last part. So particularly this particular aspect, this natural language generation. So I will mainly talk about this. So by natural language generations, what we mean? So it has two fundamental tasks. One is that the content planning and the sentence realization. So generally content planning is coming from the dialogue management. That means if you're asking a question to the bot, so now the bot will respond to you. So what to say? So that is basically managed by the dialogue management. And finally you have the sentence realization. But how to say that? So that is the final response that will be produced. So one is the planning part and finally the generation part. So for example, if you say that book a flight from Kolkata to Delhi, the system will tell you that can you please specify the date of travel. So this is how the typically the bot actually interacts with the user. So now this particular work that we had recently done, so what we have tried to do is that we wanted to define the politeness, and we tried to show that how can we incorporate politeness into the in a setting of dialogue system using the reinforced pointer-generator network. So the ultimate goal is that if you have a system, so the input to the system will be a generic response, and the output will be a courteous response or the polite response. So that will be the typical scenario of the input-output scenario of this particular model. And we have considered the customer care on the Twitter. We have collected a lot of Twitter conversation on the different companies, and our main goal was to increase the user satisfaction and to build the customer relations. So that was the main purpose of this particular work. So what has been the motivation and why it is a significant work? Because in any energy module, if you look, the courteous response can play an important role. Particularly if you want to keep your user or the engaged for a long time in the conversation. So the politeness will play an important role. So it gives a human essence, and also it makes the users more comfortable in using your own systems. That will ultimately lead to the user association with the brand or the product or the particular service that you are offering. So eventually, finally, it leads to the customer satisfaction with increase in customer retention and strong customer relations. So I'll show you some examples that why the politeness responses can retain the customer, can engage the customer for a long time in the conversation. That is an important factor. So when we started working, so at that point, there is no such data which can be used to build a model. So there is no any parallel kind of purpose you can see, where on one side you have the generic response, and on the other side you have the courteous response. That kind of data resources is not available. So what we did is that we collected the standard Twitter conversations of the different companies from the tweet. And when we started doing the annotation, at the time of annotation also we had a lot of challenges. For example, we collected the data for the different companies from the different users. So the politeness or the courteousness depends a lot on the kind of applications that the particular company is, on the service that the particular company is providing. Because all the companies don't deal with the same kind of services. So it is service dependent heavily. So that we have found out. Also people when they write, so they have the different kind of styles and the different styles of introducing the courteous behaviors. So emotion, particularly what we found is that emotion play an important role in the politeness and the courteousness. And identifying the emotion from the conversations at the runtime and generating the responses accordingly is also a very hard task. For example, in this case, if you see that if the customer is angry, then the system needs to specify and apologize. So, but from the conversation, you have to understand the customer is angry, and then you have to, when you generate the response, you have to generate the response in such a way that it should be apologetic, or you have to specify the response, okay, so that he or she can engage with the conversation for a long time. Okay. If that happens, for example, then you have to appreciate. But how to identify these emotions from the conversation, how to model it computationally. So those are the challenges. So we try to define that computational politeness in terms of the conversations. Then created the high quality data set, so with reasonable amount of conversational pairs that contains both the generic as well as the courteous responses. And then we propose a strong benchmark model, so in the baseline model, based on the context, and that is emotionally context aware, also the emotionally aware. And we have shown empirically that in terms of both human evaluation metric and also the quantitative metric that are used in natural language generations, the model is behaving in the proper direction. So now to introduce that how the courtesy was actually introduced. So this is coming from the politeness theory, and the politeness theory of Brown and Levinson in 1987. So typically, the courtesy is the showing of the politeness in one's attitude and behavior towards the others. So you can say that courtesy is a polite remark or a kind of respectful act. For example, if you go to a restaurant and then complain about the bad meal, so you might be get kicked out. So that is not a courtesy. So on the other hand, the manager generally what happens is that manager can apologize for the bad quality food, and then if you are lucky, then you can have a free dinner of that. So this is how the courtesy should come into the pictures. So in order to ensure that maybe the customer again will like to visit, may like to visit the same restaurant again. Otherwise, if the first situation happens, then probably the customer will never go there, and also there is a chance that he or she can influence his network not to visit to the same restaurant. Okay, so that can happen. So in order for the business perspective also, so the politeness is coming into the picture. So mainly there are a lot of theories of politeness. I don't have the time to cover everything, but politeness is the situation specific, and that is it is not mandatory that always you have to be polite. You can be non-polite also. Okay? There are a lot of theories behind that. Typically, the politeness is related to the face of the human. So you can have the positive face, you can have the negative face. Okay? Two kinds of faces are possible. So now the politeness also depends on the positive face. If it is a positive face, it is known as the positive politeness. If it is a negative face, then it is related to the negative politeness. So what is positive politeness in this case? For example, generally there are two ways again. So when let's say if you talk to a person, if there are similarity between the topics, so whatever you are saying, maybe your counterpart is also supporting you, so that is a kind of agreement that can happen. The negative politeness, for example, let's say advice giving. For example, you are saying something that your counterpart is not agreeing to you. He or she is advising you, or disapproving whatever you are claiming. So this kind of, but doing it in a polite way. So in a negative politeness also is a kind of disapproval, but in a polite manner. So these are the theories that you can go through from this Brown and Levinson literature in 1987. So he actually categorized the politeness into two different ways. Politeness can be the less polite or can be the more polite. And these are some of the examples. Like seeking agreement, joking, expressing optimism, what are the less polite steps? But let's say more polite, being apologetic, minimizing the imposition, appreciating, thanking, all are the more polite strategies. How to incorporate all these factors while you computationally, in a computational model. So those will be the challenges. So when we started working on this, so let's see some of the examples. So the leftmost part is the generic response. The middle one is the expected continuous response, so the polite response. So from the bot. So if you say that okay, you have some problem and then you are asking something to a bot, and the bot is replying, how can you help? Rather than saying that, if the bot says that help has arrived, we are sorry to see that you are having trouble, how can you help? This kind of apology. So the highlighted part is the part C, expressions that has to be added, and if we add it, it will be more engaging. Then for example, the second one, it is like greeting, then the assurance, for example. If you are not getting internet at certain places, for example, then you are facing a particular problem, then the bot is saying, if you want to help, let's discuss it with the board. So you are giving an assurance that we will look into your problem, we will discuss it. Then empathy, appreciation. So generally the politeness, when we model the politeness with respect to these 5 behaviors: the apology, greeting, assurance, empathy, and the appreciation. So we collected data from the channel. These are the interaction between the customers and the professional customer care agents of the company. So we have to process the data, and the data was mixed of polite and non-polite. So it was not ready for developing or creating the system. So we had to do a lot of processing for that. So we identified 3 different categories. One is the courteous and non-informative setting. For example, if you say sorry to hear about the problem. So in this case, it is courteous, but it is not giving you any information. We are not interested in that. Then it can be informative without courteous expressions. So for example, if you say that simply visit URL name to see the availability immediately. So in this case, it is not polite. You are giving some information. The other can be the mixing of both. It can be the polite plus some information. If you say that we appreciate the feedback, so now you are appreciating, it is a kind of politeness. And also you are saying that we will pass this along to the appropriate token. It is a kind of message that you are giving. So we are interested in the third part, where there is a mixing of the informativeness and also is a kind of politeness. Then we apply the clustering by after sentence encoding, all that leads to the XMLI corpus. We employed 3 professional annotators, and we annotated the data, each utterance into 3 categories. So purely courteous, without any information, purely informative, and the hybrid, the mixing of both. And this is the agreement between the annotators 85.18. So we had actually created around this many conversations, and this is for the experiment, that how we have kept something for the training, validation, and the test state. So now very deeply about the model. So